Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the space station, floating high above Earth. The lights from the control panels cast shadows on his tired face. He had been on duty for 12 hours straight, watching the deep space monitors. For any sign of trouble? Nothing ever happened out here. Most days were quiet and boring. Captain, you need to see this, said Lisa Turner from her seat at the communications desk. Her voice sounded strange, almost scared. She was pointing at her screen with a shaking finger. Jake moved over to her station. Lisa was the best communications officer they had. She could pick up radio signals from Mars on a bad day. If something worried her, it was worth checking out. What do you have, Turner? Jake asked. Sir, I'm getting a signal from deep space. It's not from any of our ships or stations. The signal's weak, but it's definitely artificial. Someone is trying to talk. To us. Jake felt his heart speed up. In all his years working in space, they had never received a signal from outside the solar system. Are you sure it's not just space noise or interference from one of our own transmissions? Lisa shook her head. No, sir. This is structured. Has patterns. It's definitely a message, but it's not in any language I recognize. The signal is coming from about 40 light-years away, somewhere in the direction of the constellation Lyra. Ryan Blake, the chief engineer, walked over to join them. He was a big man with rough hands and oil stains on his uniform. Did I hear? Right? We got aliens calling us? That's what we're trying to figure out, Jake said. Turner, can you clean up the signal? Make it clearer? Lisa's fingers flew over her keyboard. She ran the signal through different filters and programs. Slowly, the random noise started to sound more like actual words. The voice that came through the speakers was high-pitched and musical, nothing like a human voice. There, Lisa said. That's the best I can do. The signal is still pretty weak. They listened to the alien voice repeating the same sounds over and over. It sounded desperate, like someone calling for help. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Get Admiral Sullivan. On the line, Jake ordered. This is way above our pay grade. 20 minutes later, Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the main screen. She was in her office at Earth Defense Command headquarters in Colorado. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were sharp and focused. Morrison, I got your message. Play me this signal. Jake nodded to Lisa, who sent the cleaned-up alien transmission through to Earth. They all watched the Admiral's face as she listened. Her expression didn't change, but Jake could see her hands tighten into fists. How long have you been receiving? This Admiral Sullivan asked. About an hour, ma'am. The signal strength has been getting stronger. Whoever is sending it is either getting closer or putting more power into their transmission. I'm sending up our best language experts in xenobiology. Team, don't let word of this get out until we know what we're dealing with. This stays classified. 6 hours later. The space station was crawling with scientists and military personnel. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the team trying to translate the alien message. She was a small woman with thick glasses who spoke 5 human languages fluently. We've made progress, Dr. Rodriguez announced to the group gathered in the station's main conference room. The aliens are using mathematical concepts to establish basic communication. They're smart. Once we figured out their number system, the rest started falling into place. She activated a holographic display showing the translated text. The message is from something called the Zelani Republic. They're asking for help. Their worlds are under attack by something called the Korthok Empire. Jake read the translation on the screen. The words made his blood run cold. They're being invaded. Worse than that, Dr. Rodriguez continued. From what we can understand, the Korthok aren't just conquering the Zelani worlds. They're hunting the population. The Zelani are describing mass killings and what sounds like systematic extermination. Admiral Sullivan leaned forward in her chair. Why are they contacting us? How do they even know we exist? That's the interesting part, Dr. Rodriguez said. They've been monitoring our radio and television broadcasts for decades. They know about our technology and our history. But here's what's really strange. They're calling Earth a death world and humans apex predators. Ryan Blake laughed. Apex predators. Have they seen how we can barely survive a week in the wilderness without our technology? Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. I don't think they see it that way. According to their message, most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on worlds much safer than Earth. Lower gravity, fewer natural disasters, no large predators. They think any species that could survive and develop technology on a world like Earth must be incredibly dangerous. So they want the scary humans to come save them from the big bad aliens, Lisa asked. Exactly. They're offering technology, resources, and cultural exchange in return for military assistance. They think we're their only hope. Jake stared at the translated message on the screen. The Zilani were describing the destruction of entire cities, the capture of millions of their people, and the systematic destruction of their civilization. They were desperate enough to reach out to a species they had never met, on a world they considered too dangerous for most life. Admiral Jake said, "Are we actually considering this? It's going to war with aliens we've never met? To save other aliens we've also never met." Admiral Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm but determined. "Morrison, for 70 years we've been wondering if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not. Our first contact with alien intelligence is a cry for help against genocide. What kind of species would we be if we turned our backs on that?" The room fell silent. Outside the station's windows, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space. Down on the surface, billions of humans went about their daily lives not knowing that everything was about to change. Rodriguez. I want a complete analysis of everything we can learn from this transmission. Blake, start running diagnostics on all our deep space capabilities. Turner, keep monitoring that signal. If there are any changes, I want to know immediately. Admiral Sullivan stood up from her chair. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to make history. The question is, what kind of history will it be? As the meeting broke up, Jake remained staring at the translation of the alien message. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was dying while crying out for help. And somehow, they thought the humans of Earth were the ones who could save them. President Amanda Foster sat at the head of the long table in the White House Situation Room. Faces around her showed worry and confusion. In the past 24 hours, everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe had changed. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Secretary of Defense Marcus Stone. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his time as a soldier. Aliens are asking us to help them fight other aliens. They think we're some kind of super warriors because we come from Earth. Admiral Sullivan nodded from her seat across the table. That's correct, sir. The Zilani have been studying our planet for decades. They believe that any species that could evolve and thrive on Earth must be naturally suited for warfare. President Foster rubbed her temples. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, trying to understand the implications of first contact. Dr. Rodriguez, explain to me why they think Earth is so dangerous. I grew up in Kansas. It seemed pretty peaceful to me. Dr. Elena Rodriguez opened her tablet and pulled up a comparison chart. Madame President, compared to most worlds that develop intelligent life, Earth is extremely hostile. Our gravity is 30% higher than the galactic average. We have massive storms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and ice ages. Most importantly, we evolved alongside large predators. So what? Asked General Patricia Wells, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Lions and tigers didn't stop us from building cities. That's exactly the point, Dr. Rodriguez continued. Most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals on worlds with few or no large predators. The Zilani, for example, evolved from creatures similar to Earth rabbits. Their biggest natural enemy was bad weather, not other animals trying to eat them. Secretary Stone leaned forward. Are you saying they think we're naturally better at fighting because our ancestors had to avoid being eaten? Not just avoid being eaten, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Humans became the hunters. We didn't just survive alongside Earth's predators, we became the top predator. That's something most galactic species never experienced in their evolution. President Foster looked around the table at her advisors. The real question is, what do we do about it? Do we have the right to get involved in an alien war? With respect, Madam President, said Secretary Stone, I think the question is whether we can afford not to get involved. this is our chance to establish humanity as a major power in galactic politics. Or it could be our chance to make enemies we're not ready to fight, countered Secretary of State Linda Martinez. We don't know anything about these Korthok. What if they're stronger than we think? What if helping the Zilani brings them to Earth? Admiral Sullivan cleared her throat. Actually, we might know more about the Korthok than you think. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner has been analyzing the tactical information from the Zilani transmissions. A young officer at the end of the table stood up. Alex Turner looked barely old enough to be out of college, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Based on the Zilani descriptions, the Korthok rely on overwhelming numbers and superior technology. Their tactics are straightforward. They surround a planet with their fleet and bombard it until the defenders surrender. That doesn't sound too complicated, General Wells said. It's not, Alex agreed, but it's also predictable. They've apparently been using the same strategy for decades because it works against species that aren't used to warfare. The Zilani tried to negotiate and surrender when they realized they couldn't win. The Korthok accepted the surrender and then began systematic extermination. President Foster felt sick. They're committing genocide. Yes, ma'am. And from what we can tell, they've done it before. The Zilani aren't their first victims. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If humanity didn't help the Zilani, who would help humanity if the Korthok ever came to Earth? Admiral Sullivan, President Foster said finally, "What kind of military assets do we actually have available for something like this?" Admiral Sullivan smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "That's where things get interesting, Madam President. For the past 15 years, we've been running a classified program called the Terran Defense Initiative. We've been building a space fleet." Secretary Martinez looked surprised. "I wasn't briefed on any space fleet program. It was need to know only," Admiral Sullivan explained. After the near miss with that asteroid in 2019, the previous administration decided we needed the ability to defend Earth from threats in space. The program has been disguised as deep space exploration and mining operations. General Wells leaned forward. "How big is this fleet?" "We have 12 major warships currently operational, with 8 more in final construction phases. The ships are designed based on human military doctrine, redundant systems, heavy armor, and maximum firepower." Dr. Rodriguez looked confused. "Why would you design ships for maximum firepower? Most species focus on efficiency and sustainability." "Because we're humans," Secretary Stone said with a grin. "We don't build things to last forever. We build them to win fights." Alex Turner activated a holographic display showing technical specifications. The flagship is the UES Titan, a heavy battleship with enough firepower to level a small city. We also have stealth destroyers, heavy cruisers, and support vessels, all equipped with kinetic weapons. "Kinetic weapons?" President Foster asked. "Railguns that fire metal projectiles at significant fractions of light speed," Alex explained. "According to the Zilani technical data, most galactic species use energy weapons. Their shields are designed to deflect lasers and plasma, not solid objects moving at relativistic speeds." Admiral Sullivan stood up. "Madam President, we have the ships, we have the weapons, and we have the tactical advantage of being completely unknown to the enemy. The Korthok have no idea what human military doctrine looks like. But do we have the right?" Secretary Martinez asked again. President Foster was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the translated messages from the Zilani, describing the destruction of their cities and the slaughter of their people. She thought about the thousands of species that might be next if the Korthok weren't stopped. "The Zilani reached out to us because they're dying," she said finally. "They're facing extinction, and they believe we're their only hope. If we turn our backs on them now, what does that say about humanity?" She looked around the table at each of her advisors. "But more than that, if we don't act now, the Korthok might eventually come for us. It's better to fight them there than wait for them to come here." Secretary Stone nodded approvingly. "So we're going to war?" "We're going to answer a call for help," President Foster corrected. "Admiral Sullivan, you have authorization to mobilize the fleet? But I want this done carefully. We go in, we help the Zilani, and we send a message to the galaxy that humanity protects those who can't protect themselves. Admiral Sullivan saluted. Yes, ma'am. I'll contact Captain Santos and Commander Harris immediately. The fleet can be ready to depart within 72 hours. As the meeting ended, President Foster remained in her chair, staring at the holographic display of human warships. In 3 days, those ships would jump to hyperspace and announce humanity's presence to the galaxy. She just hoped they were as ready as Admiral Sullivan believed they were. Outside the White House, the people of Earth continued their normal lives, unaware that their planet's children were about to fight their first interstellar war. Captain Maria Santos walked through the corridors of the UES Wolverine, her boots making sharp sounds on the metal floor. The ship hummed with activity as her crew prepared for humanity's first journey beyond the solar system. She had commanded the Wolverine for 3 years, but this mission was unlike anything they had trained for. Captain, we're receiving the final crew transfers now, reported her first officer, Commander Tony Mitchell. He was a young man with dark hair and serious eyes. The Zalani technical advisors are requesting permission to come aboard. Maria nodded. Send them to Engineering Bay 3. Want to see what they think of our ship design? 2 hours later, Maria stood with Chief Engineer Ryan Blake as they watched 3 Zalani examine the Wolverine's weapon systems. The aliens were tall and thin, with long ears and large eyes. They moved carefully, like they were afraid of breaking something. This is fascinating, said Corvash, the lead Zalani technical advisor. His voice was high and musical through the translation device. Your weapons fire solid projectiles instead of energy beams. We have never seen anything like this, Ryan crossed his arms. These railguns can fire a tungsten rod at 12% of light speed. The kinetic energy alone can punch through most armor. The Zalani looked confused. But why use such crude weapons? Energy weapons are much more efficient and require less ammunition. Because efficient doesn't matter if you can't win the fight, Maria said. Our philosophy is simple. Hit hard, hit fast, and make sure the enemy can't hit back. Corvash examined the ship's armor plating. Your hull is so thick. This must make the ship very slow and consume enormous amounts of fuel. The Wolverine can take a direct hit from a nuclear weapon and keep fighting, Ryan explained. We built her to survive, not to be pretty. Meanwhile, across the fleet, Commander Nick Harris was giving his own tour of the used Viper to another group of Zalani advisors. The Viper was a stealth destroyer, much smaller than the Wolverine, but designed for hit-and-run attacks. Your ship is almost invisible to our sensors, said Talara, a female Zalani engineer. How do you achieve such stealth capability? Nick smiled. Dampeners, electromagnetic shielding, and a hull coating that absorbs most sensor sweeps. We can get within weapons range without being detected. But why would you want to attack by surprise? Talara asked. Surely it is more honorable to announce your presence and allow the enemy to prepare. Nick stared at her in disbelief. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead. The point is to win the fight with as few casualties as possible on our side. The Zalani looked disturbed by this concept. Their own military doctrine was based on defensive warfare and fair engagement. The idea of attacking without warning seemed wrong to them. On the flagship U.S. Titan, Admiral Sullivan was having her own conversation with the senior Zalani representative, High Counselor Jarek. He was older than the others, with gray fur around his ears and a worried expression on his face. Admiral, I must confess that your fleet is not what we expected, Jarek said. We hoped for allies who could help us negotiate with the Korthok or provide defensive support. Your ships are designed for aggression. Admiral Sullivan looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. Counselor, you contacted us because your people were being slaughtered. Korthok have shown they don't respond to negotiation or diplomacy. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hit them harder than they can hit you. But the cost, Jarek said sadly. War brings so much destruction. Surely there must be another way. There might have been another way 6 months ago, Admiral, Sullivan replied. But the Korthok made their choice when they started killing your people. We're going to make ours. In the medical bay, Dr. Rachel Adams was reviewing the biological data the Zalani had provided about the Korthok. What she found made her sick to her stomach. Admiral, you need to see this, she said over the communication system. The Korthok aren't just conquering the Zalani worlds, they're harvesting them. Admiral Sullivan arrived in the medical bay within minutes. What do you mean, harvesting? Dr. Adams pulled up a holographic display showing Korthok biology. The Korthok are carnivores, but their home world has very few large animals. They evolved to hunt smaller prey, but their population grew faster than their food supply. That's why they expand to other worlds. They're looking for food, Admiral Sullivan realized. Exactly. To the Korthok, the Zilani aren't just enemies. To defeat their livestock, to be collected. The Korthok have been systematically capturing Zilani civilians and shipping them back to their own worlds. Admiral Sullivan felt anger building in her chest. They're eating them. Yes, ma'am. And according to this data, the Zilani aren't their first victims. They've done this to at least 4 other species over the past century. The Admiral activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Admiral Sullivan. In 6 hours, we will jump to hyperspace and begin our mission to help the Zilani Republic. I want everyone to understand what we're fighting for. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The Korthok Empire isn't just conquering worlds. They're committing genocide for food. They see other intelligent species as nothing more than cattle to be harvested. This ends now. Throughout the fleet, human crews listened to their admirals' words. Many had joined the military to defend Earth, but now they were being asked to defend strangers on worlds they had never seen. Captain Santos spoke to her crew in the Wolverine's main assembly area. No, this isn't what any of us signed up for. We're about to fight aliens we've never met, to save other aliens we barely understand. But sometimes being human means standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Commander Harris addressed his smaller crew on the Viper. We're the first humans to fight in space against hostile aliens. That makes us explorers, warriors, and protectors all at once. Let's make sure we do it right. As the final preparations were completed, the human fleet prepared for its jump to hyperspace. The ships were loaded with ammunition, supplies, and determination. The crews were trained, motivated, ready for battle. High Counselor Jarok stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching the human crew work with efficient precision. These humans were so different from his own people. Where the Zilani sought harmony and peace, the humans seemed to embrace conflict as a natural part of life. Admiral, he said quietly, are you certain your people are ready for what lies ahead? The Korthok had been fighting wars for centuries. Admiral Sullivan checked the final system reports. Counselor, the Korthok have been fighting other species. Like yours, species that evolved to avoid conflict. They've never fought anyone like us. The jump countdown reached 0. Space twisted around the human fleet as they entered hyperspace, heading toward their first battle among the stars. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that its children were about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human expansion had begun. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zilani system. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, staring at the tactical display in front of her. What she saw made her jaw tighten with anger. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner from his position at the sensor station. There are hundreds of them. The Korthok fleet surrounded the last Zilani world like a swarm of metal insects. Their ships were massive, each one 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. They moved slowly in formation, methodically bombarding the planet's surface with energy weapons. Sensor report, Admiral Sullivan ordered. 237 Korthok vessels, Alex replied. Most appear to be heavy cruisers and battleships. They're maintaining a standard siege formation around the planet. Captain Maria Santos's voice came through the communication system from the Wolverine. Admiral, we're seeing massive energy. Signatures from the planet's surface. They're not just attacking military targets. They're hitting cities. High Counselor Jarak stood beside Admiral Sullivan, his large eyes filled with tears. Those are the last 3 million of my people down there. If we lose this world, the Zilani Republic dies with it. Admiral Sullivan studied the enemy formation. The Korthok ships were arranged in neat rows, their weapons pointed toward the planet. It was an efficient siege pattern, but it also meant their backs were turned to deep space. They don't know we're here yet, she said. Turner, how long before? They detect us. At this distance, maybe 20 minutes before their sensors pick us up. But once they do, they'll have overwhelming numbers. Admiral Sullivan activated the fleet communication channel. All ships. This is Admiral Sullivan. We are implementing First Contact Protocol. I repeat, First Contact Protocol is now in effect. Throughout the human fleet, captains and crews prepared for battle. First Contact Protocol was simple when meeting hostile aliens for the first time. Assume they will show no mercy and give them none in return. Strike first, strike hard, and keep striking until the enemy surrenders or dies. Santos, Harris. Prepare for attack pattern Alpha, Admiral Sullivan ordered. We're going to hit them before they know what's happening. Commander Nick Harris responded from the stealth destroyer US Viper. Admiral, my ship is already in position. I can take out their supply vessels before they realize they're under attack. Do it, Admiral Sullivan said. All ships, weapons free. Target their largest vessels first. The Korthok had never seen weapons like the ones carried by human ships. Their shields were designed to deflect energy beams and plasma bursts. When the first tungsten rod from the Wolverine's railgun hit a Korthok battleship at 12% of light speed, it punched straight through the shield, the ship's hull like they weren't there. The Korthok vessel exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Alarms began sounding throughout the enemy fleet as they tried to understand what had just happened. Direct hit on Target 1, reported Captain Santos. Their shields didn't even slow it down. Target 2 is breaking formation, added Commander Harris as he fired on a Korthok supply ship, but trying to turn and face us. But the Korthok ships were built for siege warfare, not quick maneuvering. They were large and heavily armored, but slow to respond to threats. The human ships darted between them like wolves attacking a herd of cattle. Admiral Sullivan watched the tactical display as the battle unfolded. Turner, what's their response pattern? They're trying to form defensive line, but they can't turn fast enough. It looks like they've never dealt with high-speed attacks before. The Korthok commander was broadcasting on all frequencies, trying to communicate with the unknown attackers. The translation came through as angry demands to identify themselves and explain their presence. Should we respond? Asked the communication officer. No, Admiral Sullivan said firmly. Let them wonder who we are and where we came from. Fear is a weapon too. The human fleet used tactics the Korthok had never encountered. Instead of forming battle lines and trading fire, the human ships attacked in coordinated groups, hit their targets and moved away before the enemy could respond. They targeted engines, weapons, command structures with surgical precision. Captain Santos led the heavy cruisers in a direct assault on the Korthok battle line. Wolverine, to all units, concentrate fire on the command ship. Take out their leadership. The largest Korthok vessel, easily twice the size of the Titan, found itself under fire from 6 human ships at once. Its shields failed under the barrage of kinetic projectiles, and explosions began tearing through its hull. Meanwhile, Commander Harris used the Viper's stealth capabilities to attack the Korthok from behind. His ship appeared out of nowhere, fired its weapons, and disappeared again before the enemy could target it. This is like fighting ghosts. Came a panicked transmission from one of the Korthok ships. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, half the Korthok fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were trying to retreat toward the edge of the system, but the human ships pursued them relentlessly. Admiral, reported Alex Turner, the remaining Korthok vessels are requesting permission to withdraw from the system. Admiral Sullivan looked at High Counselor Jarek. What do you think, Counselor? Should we let them go? Where Jarek was staring at the tactical display in amazement. In 6 hours, you destroyed a fleet that had been besieging our world for 3 months. I cannot believe what I have witnessed. That's not an answer to my question, Admiral Sullivan said. Jarek straightened up. Let them go, but make sure they know they are not welcome to return. Admiral Sullivan activated the communication system. Korthok fleet, this is Admiral Sullivan of the human fleet. You have 1 hour to leave this system. If any of your ships are detected here after that time, we will destroy them all. The response came quickly. Who are you? What species dares to attack the Korthok Empire? We are humans from the planet Earth, Admiral Sullivan replied. And we are here because the Zilani asked for our help. Consider this your introduction to human military doctrine. The remaining Korthok ships began jumping to hyperspace, fleeing the system as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. On the planet below, Zilani cities, that had been under bombardment for months, suddenly found the sky clear of enemy ships. Across the world, the remaining population looked up at the stars and saw human ships patrolling their system. "Hi, Counselor." Jarek turned to Admiral Sullivan with wonder in his eyes. "How did you do it? How did you defeat them so easily?" "We didn't defeat them easily," Admiral Sullivan corrected. "We defeated them efficiently. There's a difference. Doc. Are you used to fighting species that try to avoid casualties and minimize damage? We're used to fighting to win." 3 weeks after the battle, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his new office on the human colony ship that had arrived to help rebuild the Zilani world. Through his window, he could see Zilani and human engineers working together to repair the damaged cities below. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," said Lisa Turner from her communication station. She had been promoted and transferred to the colony ship to help establish permanent contact with other alien species. "This one is from the Galactic Council." Jake walked over to her station. In the past 3 weeks, they had received dozens of messages from different alien species across the galaxy. Some were requests for help. Others were demands to know who humans were and what they wanted. "What does the Council want this time?" Jake asked. "They're formally inviting Admiral Sullivan to address their assembly on the capital world of Nexus Prime. They want to understand humanity's intentions in galactic affairs." Meanwhile, on the other side of the system, Commander Sam Foster led a human task force that was hunting down the remaining Korthok forces. His ships had followed the retreating Korthok fleet to 3 different systems, destroying their supply bases and scattered fleets. "Target acquired," reported his tactical officer as they approached another Korthok outpost. "It looks like a supply depot and refueling station." "Any civilian vessels in the area?" Sam asked. "Negative, sir. Only military ships and support structures." "Blow it up," Sam ordered. "Leave nothing they can use to regroup." The human ships opened fire, reducing the Korthok base to twisted metal and debris. It was the 15th such installation they had destroyed in 2 weeks. The Korthok Empire was learning that attacking the Zilani had consequences they never expected. Dr. Alina Rodriguez stood in her laboratory on the Zilani homeworld, studying tissue samples from various galactic species. What she had discovered was changing everything scientists thought they knew about evolution and intelligence. "The differences are remarkable," she said to her research team. "Most galactic species evolved from herbivores or small omnivores. Their brains developed to solve problems related to finding food and avoiding natural disasters, not competing with other predators." Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh, looked up from his microscope. "So humans really are unique." "It's not unique, but extremely rare. In a galaxy of thousands of intelligent species, only a few dozen evolved from large predators. And most of those developed on worlds much less hostile than Earth." Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing brain scans from different species. "Look at the neural pathways. Human brains are wired for quick decision-making under stress, pattern recognition for hunting, and social cooperation for pack behavior. Most other species have brains optimized for careful planning, risk avoidance, and individual survival. That explains why our military tactics work so well," Dr. Walsh said. "We think like hunters, they think like prey." On Nexus Prime, the capital of the Galactic Council, Admiral Sullivan walked through corridors filled with aliens she had never seen before. Some were tall and thin, like the Zilani. Others were short and round, and a few looked like living crystals or energy beings. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from over 200 different species. Admiral Sullivan took her place at the center podium, surrounded by curious and sometimes fearful alien faces. "Honorable beings of the Galactic Council," she began. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan, representing the human species of Earth. We come before you today to explain our actions in the Zilani system." The crystalline being that served as the council speaker activated its translation device. "Admiral Sullivan, the council wishes to understand why humanity chose to intervene in what was considered an internal matter between the Korthok Empire and the Zilani Republic. Because the Korthak were committing genocide, Admiral Sullivan replied simply, "They were not conquering the Zilani, they were harvesting them for food. That is not an internal matter. That is a crime against all intelligent life." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many council members had not known the true nature of Korthak. Expansion, an insect-like delegate from the hegemony worlds, spoke up. "But Admiral, the Galactic Council has protocols for dealing with such situations. Why did humanity not seek our approval before taking military action?" Admiral Sullivan looked directly at the insect delegate. "Because while you were discussing protocols, 3 million Zilani were dying. Sometimes action is more important than permission." The council speaker's crystal body pulsed with different colors. "The council is concerned about humanity's military capabilities. Your species appears to be naturally aggressive. How can we trust that you will not become a threat to peaceful worlds? You can trust us because we had the power to conquer the Zilani ourselves, but instead, we saved them," Admiral Sullivan answered. "We could have taken their technology and resources by force, but we chose to help them rebuild. That should tell you everything you need to know about human intentions." Tall, elegant being from the Core Worlds Alliance stood up. "Admiral, many species are requesting human protection from various threats: pirates, raiders, and hostile empires. Are humans prepared to become the galaxy's military force?" Admiral Sullivan paused, considering her answer carefully. "Yes, we are prepared to help those who cannot help themselves. But we will not be anyone's hired army. Humanity will defend the innocent and punish those who prey on the weak, but we will do it on our terms." Back on Earth, President Amanda Foster watched the council proceedings on a live transmission. Her advisors surrounded her in the situation room, analyzing every word of the diplomatic exchange. "She's handling it well," said Secretary of State Linda Martinez. "But she's also making it clear that we won't be controlled by galactic politics." "Good," President Foster replied. "The last thing we want is to get tangled up in bureaucratic procedures while people are dying." Secretary of Defense Marcus Stone pointed to a tactical display. "Madam President, we're receiving over 50 requests for military assistance from different species. Pirates, territorial disputes, and at least 3 more situations involving systematic oppression." "What's our response?" President Foster asked. "We help where we can when we can. But we make it clear that becoming an ally of humanity means becoming part of our defense network too. We protect our friends and our friends help protect each other." On the Zilani homeworld, High Counselor Jarok stood with Captain Jake Morrison, watching human and Zilani children playing together in a rebuilt park. The young ones seemed to get along naturally, despite their different appearances and cultures. "Your people have given us our lives back," Jarok said. "How can we ever repay such a debt?" Jake smiled. "You don't repay it, you pass it on. Help the next species that needs it. That's how we build a better galaxy." As Admiral Sullivan finished her address to the Galactic Council, the chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were eager to establish relations with humanity, others were wary of their aggressive nature, and a few were already planning to request military assistance. The Council Speaker's crystal form pulsed with a final statement. "The Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a new member of galactic civilization. We welcome Earth's representatives to participate in our discussions and decisions." Admiral Sullivan nodded respectfully. "We accept that recognition with the understanding that humanity will continue to act according to our own moral principles. We will defend the innocent, punish the guilty, and stand with those who stand with us." As she left the chamber, Admiral Sullivan knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the universe was no longer the same with humanity in it. The age of human expansion among the stars had truly begun.